everyone. It's time for a book haul. So, I have gathered 2 large stacks of books here. These are all books that I either got for Christmas, got with gift cards shortly after Christmas, who had given to me by my sister because they were duplicates of hers, or I had some that I found in our bins in the basement for our book sales, and just a variety of things like that. The majority of them are used, and other than that, I will start going through the stacks. So I may as well start with this one here. These are not in any particular order other than that I've grouped series together. And yeah, let's get started. So on the top of the pile, I have The Mystic Rose by Stephen Lawhead. This one is book 3 in his Celtic Crusades. Stephen Lawhead is the guy who wrote the Robin Hood series that I'm really, really enjoying, and the first one of which made my best books of the year last year. It follows a noblewoman named Kate, who is looking to recover the fabled chalice from the Last Supper. And it is the 3rd book in a series, so I'm not going to look too deep into what all it's about, but I'm excited to start collecting that series because I wanted to collect more Stephen Lawhead, considering that I really enjoy his Robin Hood series. Next up is The Catswold Portal by Shirley Rousseau Murphy. Now, I found Shirley Rousseau Murphy's Joe Grey Cat mysteries, they're cozy mysteries, when I was a teenager, and I fell in love with the series, and I am still collecting the rest of it, and I'm doing a read-through of that series. This was one of her other series that it was always, I remember the name all the time, but I never did pick it up and read it. It's more of a fantasy. This is the first one, and it has to do with, there's a painter named Braden West, and there's a calico cat that comes into his studio. And he soon discovers that this guest is more than she seems. She can take human form as well. And she leads him into this, through this portal under the earth into this other world that she is part of as a cat. So that one, I've been wanting to check that out for years and just never did. So I found it at the used bookstore and grabbed it. Then, as you know, I've been collecting Bernard Cornwell's books, and this one is Vagabond. Oh Lord, what do I try? This one is Vagabond. This is one of his books in his Thomas of Hookton series. So Thomas of Hookton is an archer. It has to do with battles in England, and he goes on a mission to learn more about his father's strange inheritance, which is connected somehow to the Holy Grail and that sort of stuff. So that one is, I believe, the 2nd book in his Thomas of Hookton series, which I haven't read yet, but I'm planning on reading everything from Bernard Cornwell. Then I just realized I don't have these all in series order because of size. So I picked up The Girl Who Played with Fire, and I actually also picked up The Girl Who Kicked a Hornet's Nest. It's on the bottom of this pile. I'll show it to you after. This is the sequel to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is the 2nd book in the series. I haven't read the series. It's very well known, but I haven't read the series. I'm planning on reading the first one definitely this year. It's on one of my challenges. And so when I saw that they had the other 2 at the used bookstore, I grabbed them as well. This is Voices of the Dead by Ambrose Parry. This is the 4th book in the Raven and Fisher series that I've been reading over the past year and very much enjoying. The series, the first 3 books that I read made my best books of the year list again. This series follows a young doctor named Will Raven. It's set in Edinburgh in the 1850s. He is training under Dr. Simpson, who was the man who discovered chloroform and its use in surgeries and birth and that kind of thing. Raven specializes in birth, and he has, throughout the series, he's getting involved in also solving mysteries, along with a former housemaid from Dr. Simpson's named Sarah Fisher. But Sarah wants to become a doctor, even though it's not allowed for women of that time. And so her character is very, very interesting as well. And I just have fallen in love with these characters. I am really excited to see where it goes, because the third book left certain relationship things at an interesting point. And I'm very curious to see where the rest of the series goes. I love the writing of Ambrose Perry. It's a husband and wife team. I absolutely love their writing. I've fallen in love with these characters over the course of the first 3 books. So I'm really excited to read this one, which is on my TBR now for January. Then I have a set here of Bernard Cornwell's Enemy of God and the Winter King. And The Winter King is his first book in his Warlord Chronicles trilogy, and Enemy of God is the second book in it. And I believe I have the third one. Yeah, I do. It's called Excalibur. I have the third one from a previous book haul. So this is his King Arthur series. It's a trilogy, and I'm really excited to try that as well, because I love his writing in his Uhtred of Bebbanburg series. He's an excellent storyteller, and I haven't read that many King Arthur retellings, so I'm curious to see Bernard Cornwell's series on that. This one is one that I got from my mom. She got it for Christmas, and when she finished reading it, she passed it on to me to read. This is The House at Riverton by Kate Morton. I've been collecting Kate Morton's books now, and I just finished reading her one, The Lake House, which I really, really enjoyed. She makes excellent use of dual timelines, and usually the stories have some historical element as well as a modern element, and are usually some kind of a mystery. And this one deals with, it's a girl named Grace Bradley. She was working as a servant at Riverton House in 1914 and was devoted to their daughters, Hannah and Emmeline. And then there's an evening party at the house when the body of a young poet is found. It says the only witnesses to a shocking suicide were Hannah and Emmeline. And then it's decades later, Grace is in a nursing home, and she gets a visit from a young director who's making a film about the events, and wants to interview her. And so I'm assuming you figure out, solve what actually happened back then. Her writing is very, very good, very descriptive, very lyrical, but also just, she really, really puts you in the location and in the time period. So I really enjoyed her other one, The Lake House, that I read. So I'm looking forward to reading more of hers. That stack is going to get precarious, isn't it? Because I'm going backwards in size. This one is The Nightmare by Lars Kepler. This is the sequel to The Hypnotist. This is a series about Detective Inspector Juna Linna, and I believe these take place in, Stockholm. This is the second one in the series. I have the first one. I've never read it, but when I saw this one sitting there at the used bookstore for cheap, I decided to pick it up because I have been wanting to read this series. So we will see if I end up liking that series. Do I dare keep piling these on here like this? That's getting precarious. I don't know. Next, I have Think of a Number by John Verdon. This, again, is another mystery series. It is the first in a series. I believe this is quite a long series, about a retired NDP homicide investigator. Oh my God. This is about a retired NYPD homicide investigator named Dave Gurney. And it is the first in a series of mysteries that my sister enjoys and said that she thought I would really like. I think my mom has also really enjoyed them as well. So, there is, in this one, it says, arriving in the mail over a period of weeks are taunting letters that end with a simple declaration. Think of any number, picture it. Now see how well I know your secrets. Amazingly, those who comply find that the letter writer has predicted their random choices exactly. So then police are confronted with is a completely baffling killer, one who is fond of rhymes filled with threats and warnings, whose attention to detail is unprecedented, and who has an uncanny knack for disappearing into thin air. So that's kind of the premise of this one. I'm looking forward to reading this one. It is on my TBR for January as an ebook. I actually have the ebook out from the library because I have to read an ebook for my TBR game, and this was the one I picked. But then I happened to find it at the used bookstore for super cheap for this really nice hardcover copy. And so I picked that up because I'm quite certain I'll probably like that series. I don't think I dare put anything else on the top of that pile, so I'm going to start another one. There. Speaking of Kate Morton, here I have The Clockmaker's Daughter. This is another one of hers. It says, in the summer of 1862, a group of young artists led by the charismatic and talented Edward Radcliffe descends upon Birchwood Manor on the banks of the Upper Thames. And their plan is to spend a secluded summer month in the haze of inspiration and creativity, but by the time their stay is over, one woman has been shot dead while another has disappeared, a priceless heirloom is missing, and Edward Radcliffe's life is in ruins. And then more than 150 years later, there's a young archivist in London who uncovers a satchel. And from there, I believe we end up trying to solve the mystery. So that's another Kate Morton. I also have Homecoming by Kate Morton. As you can see, I've been collecting hers, and I'm really excited to read more of them this year. This one begins in the Adelaide Hills on Christmas Eve, 1959. And a local man makes a terrible discovery. Police are called, and the town is embroiled in one of the most baffling murder investigations in the history of South Australia. Then many years later, there's a journalist named Jess in search of a story, and she comes back to Sydney to see her grandmother and discovers a true crime book chronicling the long-buried police case, and then sets about to see what actually happened. I also picked up Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is a thriller that I've been really excited to check out. It's been, a lot of people have been reading it on BookTube. This follows a woman named Lucy. She and her best friend were out one night, and when she wakes up, she discovers that she is wandering the streets covered in her best friend's blood, and everyone thinks she's a murderer. So she ends up leaving the town and moving away. And then years later, she gets called back because of a true crime podcast. And she ends up going back to try and solve her friend's murder and figure out if she is actually the one who did it or not. And I've heard that her character is very entertaining to read, so I'm really looking forward to that one. Then I picked up Recursion by Blake Crouch. This book is a sci-fi. I've been wanting to try Blake Crouch because I haven't read much sci-fi, and one of my goals this year is to try some. And I had heard that his one, what's it called? Dark Matter. I'd heard that his one, Dark Matter, was really, really good and a good place to start if you're getting into sci-fi. So when I saw this one by him at the used bookstore, I grabbed it as well. It was cheap and in good shape. So this one has to deal with a New York City cop named Barry Sutton. He's investigating the devastating phenomenon the media has dubbed false memory syndrome, a mysterious affliction that drives its victims mad with memories of a life they never lived. So that sounds interesting, and I will be checking that out. And then, like I mentioned, I have The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest by Stieg Larsson. This is the other one. I think it's the third one in that Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy. So I picked that one up as well. Now we're going to restack these a little bit more safely. Let's just put some of these bigger ones back over here. All right, now we're going to move around to the other side. Yes, this one. I am very, very excited about this one. So when I was in high school, actually, I think I was even younger than high school when I discovered it first, but I discovered this series about a naval captain named Nicholas Ramage. It's written by Dudley Pope, and it takes place in the late 1700s in the age of sail. The series follows Ramage from the time that he gets his first command of a ship all the way through. In the last one, he just gets a ship of the line that he's a captain of, and then after that, there are no more books because Dudley Pope passed away at the time. So, but there's about 16 books in the series, and this was the only one that I was missing, and I have everything else in this beautiful cover set with the old paintings on it, and they have released the series, but it's in a different cover set. And I have been, because all my other ones are in this cover set with the beautiful old paintings, I wanted this one. And I have been looking for it for literally decades. I believe I started looking for this series in used bookstores back in, definitely in my university years. So it's been about 20 years that I've been looking for this book. And every time I went to a used bookstore, I would look and see if they had any of his books. And I would check everywhere and see what I could find. And I went to used bookstores all over looking. And then I just kind of gave up for the longest time. And then I was just thinking the one day, rather than waiting until I can magically find it at a used bookstore somewhere in person, why don't I check ABE Books and see if they have it in the cover that I need? They did. This came all the way from a used bookstore in England. The shipping cost me about 5 times what the book cost me, but it was worth it. It's in very good condition, and I'm very excited to finally have the final one I needed to complete this series in this beautiful cover set. Then I have this one here. This is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. This one, I don't really know what it has to do with, other than it's a woman who is trying to find Jack the Ripper. I don't know if it's the first in a series. I don't know anything else about it other than that Steph from Steph Loves, I'll put her link down in the description, had talked about this one. She was rereading it and she enjoyed it. So when I saw it at the used bookstore, I grabbed it because I like historical stuff and I like smart women in historical settings. So we'll see whether I end up liking that. This one is Rilla of Ingleside by Ellen Montgomery. This is one of the books that I didn't have in the whole Anne of Green Gables sort of series. This one follows her child Rilla, one of Anne's children, Rilla, who is almost 15 in this one. And I've read the first 2, Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea, and of course I loved them. I love Anne's character, and so I thought I love Ellen Montgomery's writing, so I thought I would pick up the rest of the series and read it over time, and so this is one of the later ones. This is Jake and the Kid by W.O. Mitchell. Now, the reason I have this is not because I don't have this book, because I own everything W.O. Mitchell has written, because he's always been one of my favorite authors. And Jake and the Kid is one of my favorite, charming, delightful stories. But I grabbed this from my sister's place because it was a duplicate that she had, and I think it may be in better condition than my existing one, which is why I have it. And, I suppose I should tell you what it's about, since I love this series, or this book. It's been years since I read it, though. It's the adventures of the kid, and Jake has hired the Moz. It's the adventures of the kid and Jake, his Ma's hired man, in the dusty streets of Crocus, Saskatchewan. I believe it takes place in the 1930s as well, if I remember correctly. It's been years since I read it, but it's a series of stories, these adventures of the kid and the hired man named Jake. So here I have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I've been wanting to read this one ever since I first saw it on BookTube. Really excited to have it now. This follows Vera Wong, who is a lonely little old lady, and she lives above her tea shop that she runs. in San Francisco's Chinatown. Then one day she comes downstairs from her house into the tea shop and finds a dead body there. And she believes that the police aren't doing everything that they should. So she decides she's going to solve the murder herself. But she also believes that it has to be somebody who comes to her coffee shop, because the villain will always return to the scene of the crime and stuff. So she starts interviewing her patrons, and it sounds like it's a really fun book. There's some touching moments, and it just looks like it'll be really good. This one, so The Full Moon Coffee Shop by Mei Mochizuki. This was the special book that I picked out for my reward for finishing my TBR board in December. So I've been really looking at this book for a long time and really wanting to read it. I read What You Are Looking For Is in the Library last year and fell in love with the Japanese healing fiction, and I read some Korean healing fiction as well, and I just fell in love with the genre. So I am looking forward to this one, especially once I learned the premise of this one. It takes place in Japan, in Kyoto, and there is this coffee shop that if you get an invitation to come to, it seems to appear at random, and the customers come in, and while they're having their coffee and tea, the talking cats who run the coffee shop offer cryptic wisdom and let them know where their lives have veered off course. So you got talking cats, you've got a coffee shop, and that combination I think is going to be a dream for me. So I am really excited about this one. This again was my full price book. It was quite expensive, but because it's a little hardcover, but this was my actual reward book. So I decided to spring for it because I wanted it so bad. This one is The Plantagenets, The Kings Who Made England by Dan Jones. Now, I have been reading Dan Jones's book, Powers and Thrones. I've been reading the ebook that I got out from Libby, and I am loving his writing. He is an English historian, and the other one that I'm reading is essentially the history of the Middle Ages, whereas this one focuses on England's greatest royal dynasty, the Plantagenets. And I am in love with Dan Jones's writing. His style is so readable, so entertaining, and I'm really enjoying the other books, so I'm really excited to get this one and read it. It's a good chunker, but like I say, his writing style is really good. And I've watched a video of his now that my friend showed me off of the History Channel, with a couple of videos with Dan Jones in them, and I'm really entertained by his storytelling. So looking forward to that one. And then I have Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is a memoir, and I've been wanting to read this one for a long time, ever since I saw on a live stream that JK from BTS was reading it. So I've been wanting to read it for a long time. It is the memoir of Michelle Zauner, who's an indie rock musician. And it deals with her, it's her candid coming of age story. It deals with her Korean identity and growing up as an Asian American, and her relationship with her mother. And it looked really, really interesting. I've heard that it's a bit of a tearjerker as well, so I'm interested in seeing how I like it. I don't read a lot of memoirs, but I have heard this is a really good one. So this beast of a book is one called Shardik by Richard Adams. He is the author of Watership Down, which is the book about the bunnies that is my favorite book of all time. And I had no idea that he had written another book. This one's a fantasy. It is centered upon the long-awaited reincarnation of the gigantic bear Shardik and his appearance among the Ortelgan people. So it is a fantasy, I have never read it. I hadn't even heard of it before when I saw it, and I just saw Richard Adams, author of Watership Down, and I knew I had to grab it because I love his storytelling in Watership Down. That is my favorite book of all time, and I thought, why not check out something else that he wrote? Then I have Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. This is the sequel to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which I really enjoyed last year, and it made my best books of the year. So this is the sequel. This is again told by Ernest Cunningham, and he gets invited to the Australian Mystery Writers Society for their crime writing festival. And it takes place on a train, and he was hoping for some inspiration for his second book. And then one of the writers on the train is murdered, and they have to try and figure out who did it. And it's kind of a locked room mystery, obviously, because they're all stuck on a train. And I loved the first one. I loved his sense of humor and just his style of writing where he breaks the fourth wall and is talking to his reader. And so I'm looking forward to that one. I have this one on my list to read for one of my challenges this year. This one is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I had asked for this one for Christmas, and Christmas delivered. This is the first book in his, well, so far it's a trilogy about, what's the trilogy called? The Bloodsworn trilogy. So this is the first one in the Bloodsworn trilogy. And it is a Norse mythology inspired epic fantasy. And I just love the cover. I love the size of the monster. If you look at the size of the little man there, it looks like a dragon, or it could be Jorgumon, the serpent that surrounds the earth in Norse mythology. I don't know. But anyways, it is Norse-inspired epic, and I read the first 10 pages of this for my TBR game, one of the challenges I had to do, and I really enjoyed it, but I did end up picking a different one for this month just because I have so many other big books, and this one is a bit of a chunker, but I will definitely be reading this one this year, and I want to get the other two in the series. I've heard John Gwynne's writing is excellent. I haven't read any of it before, so I'm really looking forward to that. Next up is another thing I asked for Christmas, specifically, and that is this trilogy here. This is the Robin Hood trilogy by Stephen Lawhead. So there's Hood, Scarlet, and Tuck. And I read Hood this year, and I took it out from the library for one of my library challenges, and I absolutely loved it. And I haven't read the other two in the trilogy yet. My goal is to read them this year to see if I like it. I loved his style of writing. He was very lyrical and an excellent storyteller. The characters were really good. The character arc of the main character, Bran, who is your Robin Hood character, it's set in Wales. And Bran is a young prince in Wales, and he has to try and defend his kingdom from the Normans who are moving in to take over everything. And his character arc was so good in the first book, and I just can't wait to read the other two and see how he deals with the series and where he goes with it, because I love the concept that he introduced of moving the Robin Hood tale from Sherwood Forest in England to the thick forests of Wales in the time of just after William the Conqueror. So really excited about that trilogy. And then the last ones I have, these are nice and floppy too, I like that, is the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. So I have Mistborn, The Well of Ascension, and The Hero of Ages. And this is the whole Mistborn trilogy. My sisters and I are going to be doing a buddy read of the Cosmere, and we're following the order that was recommended by Sylvia from Library Unbounded, and I'll put her link down in the bottom as well. And she did a whole video where she talked about the Cosmere and how she recommends reading it. And she recommended starting with the Mistborn. So that is what we are going to do. So I used one of my gift cards to grab this trilogy, and I'm very excited for it. It looks interesting. It is set. I haven't actually read anything from Brandon Sanderson yet, so that's why I'm excited to read it. This one says, "The mists rule the night, the Lord Ruler owns the world. Once a hero rose to save the world, he failed. Ever since, the world has been a wasteland of ash and mist, controlled by the immortal emperor known as the Lord Ruler. But hope survives. A new uprising is forming, one built around the ultimate caper, the cunning of a brilliant criminal mastermind, and the determination of an unlikely heroine, a street urchin who must learn to master the power of a Mistborn." So that's what that trilogy is, and I'm very excited for that. So that is the bunch of books that I have hauled over the last few months and gotten for Christmas and gotten with gift cards and all that fun stuff. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have read any of these books and which ones you are most excited that I'm going to read down in the comments, and give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys on my next video, which will hopefully be coming up pretty soon. Bye.